Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to In the Mind podcast. And a little bit of information before we begin today. This was supposed to be a video experience as well as an audio experience. And I was going to have a whole bunch of cuts and segments that we could jump into. But unfortunately, in editing, I somehow managed to delete all of the video files. All of them. They're gone. I can't find them anymore. And I'm not a techie, so I have no idea where to get them. And so we are just going to have a long audio format. And for those who will listen, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. With that being said, this is the interview with Austin Geoffrey. Thank you and enjoy. One. And hello, welcome to In the Mind, a journey in perspectives. And today is the first ever interview with Mr. Austin. I do not know how to pronounce your last name.
It's Geoffrey.
Geoffrey. Okay. I'm dyslexic, everybody. Sorry about that. So with Austin Geoffrey, thank you so much. Like, you made a post on one of my posts. You made a comment on one of my posts earlier, and then I thought we'd reach out and we'd start this conversation. How are you doing today?
Good. It's good to see you again. It's been a while since we've talked.
Oh, a long time.
So excited to be on here. Excited to talk.
Yeah. And so a little bit before, we were talking about the idea of the mission of In the Mind, which is to understand multiple perspectives and actually with a focus on when people are talking. Most people say what they want. They say what they want. They say what they believe, and then the other person begins saying what they want and saying what they want to believe. And very rarely do these two people stop and actually try to understand what the other person is. Mm-hmm. Active listening is something that I don't really see a lot in our culture, and I feel that social media actually exasperates this to a great degree, because we only really see our own opinions. We only really see our own viewpoints, and then our friends are in the same point of view. So that's kind of what we want. That's what I think we'll start off with, which is the idea of when you're in a room and you're hearing different opinions, like, what is your process? How do you handle different opinions?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, by the way. And I think the first thing I always like to think about is how I'm showing up to a space in the first place. It's pretty easy when things are going really well and you're having a good day. And you have a conflict of opinion or a conflict of conversation that happens, to come at it from a different perspective. And so the first thing I always try and be mindful of is that the things that I believe don't always have to be my identity. And that's the same true for the other person, right? And are we talking about specifically if I'm in a conversation that's a debate, or are you talking about specifically just in general connecting with people?
That's a good one. I believe that a debate where you're trying to prove a point and just a conversation with people is very, very different. Right. If I'm in a debate and I have a point to prove, then I'm going to use whatever strategy that I can to try to prove my point. And it also depends what the purpose of the debate is. If I want to win, and by winning my opponent is humiliated, then I guess that will go that way. But I feel that a lot of people actually treat general conversations as debates. Mm-hmm. I can't be around this person because they did something horrible, go to some certain politician's rally or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually have a thought on that. So I believe in my experience, where I see the benefit of just conversations in general is the window into seeing a different person's perspective on life.
Yeah.
So, the studies around reality and how we perceive reality is very interesting, because there are some segments of what we can kind of experience in our own life that is true, but there's also a portion of it that's created within our own mind because of our experiences, our traumas, our past, that we perceive things that might not necessarily be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know I work on that consciously sometimes. But when you're in in the room with another person and you're just having a conversation, it's an opportunity to see the world from a different perspective, right? That's where we talk about empathy, as walking in someone else's shoes. But I find that's why I think it helps depending on the headspace that I'm in. But every time you have like an opportunity to, listen to someone's thoughts or listen to someone's story, I find it's really beautiful when you give someone attention.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
Yeah. I like one of the things that I love the most in this world is finding someone whose opinion or view or how they just look at something is completely different than mine. And in that sense, I feel like how we look at things and how we interpret things, it tells a story of that person's life. And if I look at that picture over there, and what I see is the journey of the journey of a lion coming home after like a long war or something, and somebody says like sees a kitten or something, I don't know.
right.
Okay, I'm very fascinated, like how did you get to that point, like who are you, and like what is your story of how we got there. At least I've always been. So different opinions that don't make sense to me are very fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I view it. I think it depends on, definitely, like I said, my state of mind. Like if I'm a more agitated standpoint, it's
Mhm.
really hard to do that. But
Oh yeah, like
it's,
the state of mind where like everything is stupid.
when you have a
um
shit day
yeah,
and
it's
then
like this is
someone says
stupid.
something, you're like, fuck off, like,
Mhm.
which is not very seen and stuff like that. I
But
have a good friend, and he said that you know me, I'm very big about human connection. That's like one of my biggest passions, is learning more about that and how to facilitate it more.
mhm.
And he said something really recently that's kind of challenged some of my viewpoint, and it's that people need the space to express themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that we're seeing that on social media. We're seeing that in person. It's very important for people to share their personal stories and to feel like someone listens. And when that happens, it's not about you sharing your personal story in accordance to theirs.
Mhm, mhm.
It's about like listening. It's about actually listening, and which is a skill, right? That's something you have to work on. But like
Yeah.
it's something I work on, right? But it's actually about them just telling you their story, and you giving them the space. And that's not necessarily human connection based. It's just people want to express themselves. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, there was a class I took long ago in college where it was entirely have you ever heard of tending?
No, not yet.
It's
I'm going to.
basically, yeah, it's basically active listening. It is when like what we're doing right now. When someone's talking, you actually are taking in everything that they hear in their body language, their movement, their body language, their movement, their words, their tones, and you are trying to understand what they're trying to say, what to say, rather than most people like they'll listen, but they're just waiting for you alone the conversation so they can
Mhm.
say their piece, or they'll listen waiting for that thing that you said that relates back to them or relates to something in their story. But tending is the idea that you are there for them and give them support what they need at that time, and then if they need a reflection or they need a bounce back or they need you to find a solution, you're right there in that space. And so it sounds like have practiced tending, if not knowing the word though.
Like unknown to myself.
Yeah, active
I mean,
listening.
it's a practice. I'm
Mhm.
sure. Do you work on that as well? Like for me, my experience is when someone's talking, I can all of a sudden have this idea that pops into my head, and I think it's a great idea, right? And
Mhm.
I understand that ideas can be fleeting, and it can feel like in that moment that if you don't say something that it'll be gone.
Yes.
But something that I kind of consciously have to think about in those moments is that all of my thoughts are something that I already have.
Hmm.
And when like tonight when we're having this conversation, I don't have your thoughts. I don't have your experience in the world at all. And so it behooves me to, what was the word again?
Tend. Tending.
Tending. It behooves me to do that because it's been a while since we've talked. And so if I give that space for you to express yourself and talk about what you want to talk about, it's interesting to me.
Hmm.
And that's where I think it's like it takes that active, for me. It's like it's active for like the first few times that happens, where it's like, oh, I really want to say that, but then I'm like, well, I don't need to right now. Like it's going to take away from the moment, right?
Hmm. Um,
What do you work on? Like, is there something that you kind of view around like people expressing their thoughts, or like if you're in conversation, what are the tools that you use? I'd love to
oh,
know.
oh, I was raised to kind of behave like this, or to actively listen from a very young age. I didn't know that that's what they were doing, my grandparents, when they raised me. And so it's kind of been the way I've always thought, and I've refined it over the years. But I've always been curious as to why someone thinks some way. My grandmother didn't like us getting angry
Hmm.
because it was just a secondary emotion, and it was like a process that we had to go through in order to get to the real problem. So, okay, you're angry. Yes, you can feel the emotion. Okay, but understand why is it upsetting you? Why is this upsetting her? And then fix the differences, or just listen to the differences. And so a lot of things, tools I use is like listening with your eyes, like really watching the person's expression, watching how they are, and not having an agenda when you talk to somebody. Very, very important. Like if I have the agenda, like, okay, in this interview, I'm going to get Austin's secrets. All right. I don't know what they are, but I'm going to get them. And so we're going to
Yeah.
lead the conversation to that. Then it feel entirely different. It would be very contrived, and people can feel it. Like when you start manipulating them, it kind of it's a little bit shaky. And so I try to be as genuinely curious to the person as possible. Um, but yeah, watching, listening, and also um, working in on little details in the conversation. Uh,
I've been experiencing something very interesting
hmm.
lately, and I think you and I were raised somewhat similarly in that fashion. And then also, it sounds like we both have been working on it beyond just our upbringing.
Hmm.
And one of the, I mean, I've been studying this specifically very consciously the last 10 years, and over the last year, I've had the most beautiful conversations with sometimes
Mm.
with strangers.
Hmm.
Uh, or with friends and stuff like that. And something that I constantly hear from them, which I take a lot of pride in, is they say when I tell you things, you listen and it looks like you care.
Hmm.
Jokes on them, I don't know,
Oh,
but no, I do, right?
ooh, that's nice.
And I had a conversation actually with a couple of friends at a coffee shop tonight.
Hmm.
One of them's a newer friend, one of them's like a friend of acquaintance, and we were talking about stuff, and they said, "Wow, I haven't shared that in a long time, and that means a lot to me." Like, and constantly over this last year, where I think I've refined it a lot more, because of the pandemic, because of the time to do that, is how grateful people are when you actually listen to them,
Hmm.
and that's it, right? Like you just listen, and they'll and it's not like I've seen this once, I'm seeing this over and over again, where at the end of their story or at the end of their expression or whatever that may be, they just like they like light up, like they get so excited
They felt heard.
and heard, yeah. Or even if the story's not exciting in the
Hmm.
sense of like maybe it's a sad story, there's like this feeling of like deep like understanding
Yeah.
that it's really for me, it's really beautiful to see and experience that, and I love when people share that with me, and and then that's how I get like like that's how you get lifelong friends. That's how
Hmm.
you maybe find someone that you fall in love with. Like that's how you get people in your corner that care about you back. It's like you have to give that space to them as well, regardless of what the story is that they're sharing.
Hmm.
And that's I think the value that I see in doing it. um, and then also of course making sure that they give you the space to do that back, otherwise it's just a one way friendship. So
Hmm.
uh, I think there are some tactics to social dynamics that are important to like learn, like as a technical standpoint, and then once you get them you can kind of just rely on them, and that would be one of them, is just tending, it's just giving people the space to talk.
Sounds like you're learning to develop very intimate friendships and very intimate conversations almost off the get go, and all you have to do is really listen. Um,
So
it's my but
oh, sorry.
hmm? No,
I
ask
have
your
a
question.
question for you. How do you feel about small talk?
Small talk. Um, I can do it. I'm not particularly interested in it, and it's usually really, really boring. Unless I usually turn the small talk into something that's controversial, amusing, funny.
Right.
Okay. It depends upon how it is. The purpose of small talk is to simply to pass time before whatever you're doing is going to go happen, and I would rather just sit in silence with the
Yes.
person.
I hate
Okay.
small talk.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's a waste of someone's precious time on this planet.
Hmm. But small
Um,
talk, I feel, can be the start. You can't immediately dive into the deep end. You first have to go through the shallows and through the mids, and then you
right.
can get into the deep. And with friends, like, whoa, ho, go straight in there. So I recently, not recently, like a while ago, I just decided I will use small talk to learn to start treading in the shallows and then going deeper. Because some people actually love to live in that area. They love to
Yeah.
live in the shallows. And for me, like that's another perception. Like I hate small talk. It's a waste of time. I don't care. Like, did you hear? Did you like the weather is so amazing today?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yes. It rained all week. And
yes,
you're
it
like, I
did.
was there.
But then to me, it's like, okay, so why are they starting to engage in the small talk? Are they really interested in the weather, which means that is this something deep for them, or are they nervous? And I can see little habits of what they're running through. They're trying to keep up the silence, or are they one of these people who just constantly talk, and weather is on their mind? And which, if I bring something else, will they talk about that? So usually, I use that moment to analyze them, unless I'm not in the mood to talk to people, which is usually
Right.
frequently often since like, cool, yes, it did rain. Bye.
And then the crickets.
Which
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with.
Yeah. I in 2018, I really just realized for myself, I was doing a lot of small talk that to like make people feel comfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of realized that I never liked it. And so I made a conscious decision to stop doing that.
Now, when you made the small talk to make people feel more comfortable, um, was it for them or was it for you?
It
Did
was
you
for
have?
it was for them,
It was
right?
for them. And did you feel like you had to give them something to do that? Like they were costing you energy. It was costing you a little bit of energy to kind of contribute to them.
I really crave authenticity, I think is where it comes from.
Hmm.
And I felt like for me, it felt inauthentic to how I wanted to be on this planet, right? How I wanted to show
Hmm.
up.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the cost is, I've refined it a little bit more where I agree with you. It's like some people that's how they feel comfortable. Like that's how
Yeah.
they like for them that might be the extent of maybe they're having a really fucking hard day, right? Or
Hmm.
maybe something's crazy going on in their life and small talk is exactly what they need. And so I've been a little bit more conscientious of that. I should maybe say it's like if that's all that's there to offer, I kind of go the same approach as you. I'm like, hey, it's really nice to talk with you, but I'm gonna head on, right?
It
Like
won't fulfill you personally.
right. And I
Hmm.
think that's okay. It's like, I think what I've been realizing more and more is that part of, being authentically showing up as yourself is that you're not going to get along with everyone. Like, there's some
What?
people that compatibility issues, right?
Hmm.
And so that's hard when you're, and maybe this bleeds into a conversation we had earlier
Hmm.
where it's really hard when you have different viewpoints of what's happening in the world or what to
Mm.
do. And I think I personally have a big problem with social media. I think it's a great tool,
Hmm.
but it sometimes causes a lot of division because people aren't seeing the person in front of them. There's no empathy available, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big topic. Like I have been thoroughly shocked by many of my really good friends, really, really, really good people. I know they're good people. I spend time with them. I talk to them, and I am shocked by the things they have said. Um, and I can't imagine them actually saying them in actually the face to face to a person. Like,
Right.
and I don't know if that's because either they've had so much time to be alone with their thoughts and now it's just kind of and Facebook is such an easy thing, or Facebook or Twitter or whatever you're doing is such an
Right.
easy way to just let your thoughts out, so there seems like there's no consequences, or like you can't see how it affects the person. um or if everyone just went crazy, being locked up in their houses and their time and alone, that they just started
Yeah.
like expressing themselves all over the
I mean,
place.
I'm a little crazier. I don't know about you, but
I think I've always been crazy, so I was
oh,
okay.
self-proclaimed.
Yeah. It
Um,
also depends what your definition of crazy is.
yeah, that's true.
Um, but this idea, yeah, like I don't like social media simply because it doesn't allow us to engage in the nuances and depth that a conversation can have. And even this conversation between Zoom, it is not anything compared to being in person.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because then it's like you can feel the energy, you can see actually the body movement. You're like, we're attuned to this, and so it's great. This is amazing. Like, I don't know where you are, but I can have a conversation to you about this, and it's just
It's kind of like a magic portal into
yeah.
it. Like technology is beautiful. Like social media is just a tool.
Yes. But I
Um,
feel that a lot of people are using social media, and they're, like you said, it's this something earlier, like it's becoming part of their identity. Like a lot of people's other opinions that you would disagree with, it's you don't hold the opinion as part of your identity. And I feel like a lot of people now do hold what they feel, what they see, and what they agree with as part of their identity. And if you disagree with that, if you go against that, you are going against them. You are going against what is right. And why would you go against what is right? It's wrong.
yeah. Do you mind if I jump into that idea? And I'd love to talk about. I'm not going to talk about politics in the sense of
Yeah.
politicians, but I'd like to talk about like left, right wing, and where I've seen that with friends,
Mm-hmm.
because I would say I honestly don't care where you fall on that spectrum. I
Mm-hmm.
care more about how you show up in the world and how you treat me or how you treat other people.
True.
And you know, I think so. I've recently gotten some friends that are much more right wing, and I tend to be more central left wing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it started to challenge some because I really like them as
Oh,
people, right?
yeah.
It started to challenge me as far as my understanding. Like all people who are right wing are the fucking worst, right? Like they're just they
The
don't
racist,
understand, right?
chauvinist, sexist, etc., etc.
And insert, and the thing that I started to hear, first of all, I got along with them really well. They're very caring, very sweet, and they wanted to give back.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actively doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I was hearing the exact same things being said about, left-wing people,
Yeah. You
right?
saw
And
the
so,
narrative.
right, I think I've actually, since I've been friends with them, become a little bit more of a fuller person because I understand that we can have, differences of opinion, yet still show up as, genuinely good people.
Would you?
And, oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
continue.
The thing that was like definitely uh, an eye-opening experience for me is that depending on how we're raised as people, we see
Mm-hmm.
things that are very important to us
Mm-hmm.
and we share them, right? And so I would say, I was raised to care a lot about like the planet and equality and these are important subjects. Whereas the people that I was talking with that were a little bit more right wing was like, freedom of expression is important. The ability to feel safe, like censorship. Where does that stop? When does a company get the right to be the government?
Mm-hmm.
And these are topics, to be honest, that if you were talking and you took the left and you right and just eliminated them, everyone
Mm-hmm.
would care about. It's
Yes.
just about where we focus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to, like, I was just like, oh, they don't know at first, they don't get it. And then as I had more and more conversations, it's like, wow, I don't get it. Like I only
Yeah.
get one side.
Would you say that your friendships with people who had different opinions you has improved you as a person, whatever that means?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's the hope, right? I would
Yeah.
say it makes me more accepting of people
Yeah,
and
I
more
would.
tolerant.
There are definitely friendships with I've had with people that I say I became a worse person because of that, in the sense that my standards were lowered or I
Right.
became sloppier or lazy or whatever. And when they were no longer in my life, it was like, oh, right. Okay,
This is a
cool.
little bit better.
Yeah, this is better.
Whoops.
And then vice versa, when there are people in your life that you realize, oh, I'm around them in my life, so I'm starting to actually get up 2 hours extra in the morning, and I'm getting more work done. Or like I'm around them, and suddenly I feel the need to work out, and like they're being a positive influence in my life. I'm around them, I'm beginning to become more open and understand other people's points of view because I've interacted with this type of person.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I've experienced as well. Being more mindful about the people I'm around,
Mm-hmm.
like especially intimately.
Mm.
Uh, and the people that I tend to be around more often than not lately have a good sense of identity, but they don't put that identity on other people's as an expectation.
What does identity mean to you?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an adapting one. I actually wrote a blog post about this years ago
Mm.
about self-labeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually don't really believe in like a full identity. I think identity is pretty liquid.
Yeah.
And I think it's better to identify yourself by the actions and the verbs that you do in the world, opposed to how you feel you are. And
Mm.
so what I mean by that is, and actually, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. I had a huge breakthrough in 2018. And I was out at Swingcouver, which is a West Coast swing event. And yeah, holla!
I miss it. Okay.
Oh, so much.
Okay. So
Okay,
pain
that's
for
the
a
end. I'm gonna
second.
have a cry sesh over here.
Okay.
It's this and Zod knows this. It's this beautiful West Coast swing event
It's
that's
an
held in
amazing
Vancouver,
event.
Canada.
They
You
have
can get
great
all the
hats.
sushi to your heart's content, and it's amazing.
Mm.
It's a great event, right?
Yeah,
And I showed
amazing.
up,
Shout out to Kyle and
and I
Sarah.
had the flu.
No, Kyle and sorry, Kyle. Sorry. Shout out to Sarah and John Cocarnell. Sorry, John. Okay.
Yes, we still love the event. We hope to see it soon.
Yes.
January 2021, 22.
Yeah.
So anyways, I was at this event, and this is 2018, and I got the flu on the trip up. Like, I have a sore throat. This is before COVID, so I'm all good.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to the event, and I'm just doing a little bit of dancing, and I just feel like shit
Mm-hmm.
pretty
Because the sushi.
fast, right? And I just stayed up in the hotel room, and I went down to competition because I had been training, like I've been really working,
You were there.
and I just couldn't dance. Like I couldn't think. I shouldn't have been on the floor in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But like I was just so determined that I had to be there that I showed up sick. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do anything like physical when you're like really ill, especially dancing. Your timing's off.
Dude,
You
everything
can't
sucks.
connect. Like your sinuses are blocked, so your balance is shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I
It's a
remember
disaster.
obviously I didn't place. Obviously nothing good happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I didn't get anyone sick. I probably did.
Nothing good happened next
I
back when
mean,
we
this
went
is before
sick.
COVID, so a little
Yeah.
bit
So it
better,
was
but like,
fine back then. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, if he was fine, no one got COVID, no one died. We're
everyone's
good.
good.
That we know of.
Patient zero right there. So anyways, I went up to the hotel room, and I just started crying because for many years I had built myself this identity of being a dancer. And actually and I'm sure maybe you can relate to this a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
In 2000, but like the thing is I started in that feverish, I was like 100 some degree temperature, and
Dude,
I
you
just
were.
started having these thoughts, right? And one of the thoughts I had is that like, over the last year and a half, I haven't really been happy at any dance event or even at socials I've been at. I'm like just miserable.
Really?
I'd say good night, bad night, mostly bad nights.
Mm-hmm.
And and I started thinking like, well, what if I, couldn't ever dance again? And I started to realize, well, I haven't been showing up in like, a career really. I haven't been showing up as a family person. I haven't, there's all these sacrifices that I made to be a dancer. And then, lo and behold, I get sick, and it's like, it's out the fucking window. Right. And I started to, in that fever, it's like fever state of mind. So maybe I'm a little crazy, but like
Mm-hmm.
what I experienced then is I'm like, well, what if I wasn't a dancer? What would I be? I'm like, well, I'm in marketing. So I'm like, oh, I'm a marketer. I'm like, well, what if I take that title away? And I
Yeah.
kind of kept stripping it away until I finally got
Yeah.
to the place where the only thing that I could really identify myself as is a human. Like I'm just a human. And I remember consciously thinking about, well, if I'm just a human, well, how do I dance, right? And then I'm like, well, You know, when a chef cooks, he's not like, I'm out chefing. He's cooking, right?
Yeah.
And then people look at them like, oh, that guy's a chef.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, what if I, go out to a dance event and instead of being a dancer, I just show up and I just dance,
Mm-hmm.
And it was terrifying to me, to be honest. I'm like, whoa. I mean, like, and I obviously didn't dance that weekend at all.
Yeah.
And then I felt better and I showed up the first time and I did that. And I can tell you this, ever since then, every dance event I go to and every social, well, not right now, but
Mm-hmm.
I've been happy. I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited because all I have to do is dance. And so that's kind of how I view identity
Mm-hmm.
is I would rather people identify me over there for the actions that I do in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's a lot more about verbs.
Um, Interesting. So it seems like by stripping away the labels and the obligations and everything attached to the word dancer, you were more able to really embrace the actual activity of dancing, which would be, in my opinion, movement to music. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so.
I think we're very limitless as people for the most
Mhm,
part.
mhm.
And I think identity can be a limiter.
Yeah. Okay. And
Does that make
I'm get
sense?
yeah, I'm guessing because based upon my own experience with dancing, dealing with these crises with what I am,
Yeah.
um, you found out that it wasn't so much the dancing that you disliked, but it was the pressure that you put up on yourself. It was the standard, the continual rising standard of what you were and what you weren't, and the comparison to other
Right.
people, and your worth mattered, determined by how good you did or how well you placed. Um,
Right. Like, you really like to talk about like definitions.
yes.
So I'd say the definition of what I had in my head as a dancer fluctuated day to day, but it
Mm-hmm.
was unrealistic. It was something that couldn't be obtained until much later with years of practice and
Mm-hmm.
training. And so I was stuck in an identity that would make me unhappy for a very long time.
Yeah. Um,
Is that kind of, I mean, because definition, and it would fluctuate. Like, the definition is like, oh, cool, I'm a great dancer. Like,
yeah.
right. And
I
so
know the
I don't
beat.
know. How do you view identity?
Mm, I think there are two parts. I think there is your own self identity, and that is limited based by your own imagination and your self talk. It can be literally
Mhm.
anything. And then there's the identity that the people assign to you, and that is limited by what the world sees and what the conclusions they come to. Um, like, and those things are so malleable. They are so able to change. They almost, to me, they can be both the most important thing in the universe and also mean absolutely nothing. The weight, they only
Yeah,
have weight
I
as,
like that.
yeah, they only have as much weight as you decide to give them. Um, so if I like identify as a dancer and I have my standards as a dancer
Mhm.
is a person who knows a particular dance and knows the basics and knows the steps. I'm a professional dancer, so I teach it as as a living. I travel a lot. I do this. I place constantly, and unless I do these things, I'm no longer a dancer. I can have all those definitions and all those labels. But one day I can decide. You know what a dancer is? A person who wiggles. And today I'm gonna be a wiggler.
The
Um,
professional wiggler.
a professional.
A professional. Oh my God, that sounds really
A
good.
professional
I'm a
wiggler.
professional wiggler. Is there like business cards for that?
Whoa. That's yeah. Side note, that's kind of what I realized what the entire dance industry is. We are all just professional partiers. Um, we just go around, we dance, we show off, and then we do the next thing the next weekend. And the
Have you ever?
job
Have
more.
you ever? Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I was gonna say, have you ever had one of those moments where you're at a dance and you just like you look out
mm-hmm.
and you realize we're all kind of crazy. We're just a bunch of humans touching hands, going "Ah," like
Yeah. We're all
for
wiggling
hours
together.
on end, and you're like, what the?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I had definitely had those kind of moments where it's like, what are we all doing? But then the beat drops and like it's so good.
It doesn't matter.
um, yeah. We got a little bit off topic though. I think we were talking about the idea of intimacy.
Yep.
And the idea of like I don't know how we got off that so quickly. Oh, like I wanted to know the definition of what is an identity. And I feel that things that are truly intimate, at least with all the relations that I have, is when the person's view of me almost matches my own view of me.
Ooh, I really
Um,
like that definition.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like like understanding can happen, and they get to know you on a level, but they don't really know you. No one can really know you except yourself, and even you have a
Right.
faulty memory. So,
Right. Just
uh,
me.
just you, not
Just
everyone
me.
else. Yeah,
No,
uh,
yeah, definitely we all do.
yeah, and but when someone sees us the way that we see ourselves, that to me I think creates such a powerful bond. And I think that's what also almost everyone really wants, is someone to know us, to get us, to know that we're not only that we're alone, but that someone's there with us. Like you can be in the mall and just be by yourself. You're not alone with anybody, but no one's there. But if someone's there with you in the crowd, in the universe, and they see you and they see what you see, that's like kingdoms would be what I would are were fought over that type of stuff.
Right. Quite literally, like, Helen and Troy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like just, was that
Hmm.
Rome?
Yeah, but I'm
Rome
pretty. No. Yeah, Helen Troy. I think that was from.
or
I
Greek.
heard a joke about that going like, and then they went to war
Yeah.
or that ass.
Oh, Helen.
Uh,
I like that definition of intimacy a
mhm.
lot. I think I think intimacy can just happen over time or it can happen instantly, right?
True. I would say usually greater intimacy happens over a longer and more thorough period.
Right.
Because you then like people change or people like sometimes the person's identity, what they see in you is what they project onto you, and maybe you like the projection so much that it's glorious, and then if as time comes by you realize these these actually don't match.
Right.
Why doesn't it feel good anymore?
That I think I want to stay on the intimacy thing. I'd love to get into desire a little bit and
Yeah.
also applying that to friendships and relationships and stuff like that as well. But
Mhm.
um, I find that intimacy, some of the conversation I've been having with my friends is whether or not intimacy can be taught.
Mm.
And I've actually been really surprised because the thought that the answer that I had is actually the answer that a lot of my friends and people I've talked to about have.
Can
And
be
it's
taught.
that they think for a moment and they look out and they said, they're like, no, I don't think it's something that you can teach. I think
I
it's
think you
something that
can.
you kind of, have.
Yeah.
And I had the benefit of teaching, not teaching, but like, providing a space for people to
Oh
be
yeah.
intimate over.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
But intimacy, I think, is something that we already have within us. We just, access.
Hmm.
I think that we have traumas and stuff like that prevent us from being intimate in moments, or maybe situations and stuff like that. But I think all of us as humans, for the most part, can be intimate if we choose to, as long as we remove anything that's in the way.
That is a fascinating kind of thought pattern. Like, can intimacy be taught? And my first reaction is yes, it can be taught, and we do see it being taught all the time with mothers and their children and parents when they're hugging it and holding it and they're being cared for. And we know the results with babies that are not loved and are not
Mhm.
changed that way. It's it usually is not. It's not good. It's not good. And a lot of us have a long time having to break the barrier and having that they have to learn how to be intimate. I know personally with myself that I have a lot of intimacy issues based upon traumas and et cetera.
Join
So
join the crowd, man.
yeah, it's the human
Struggle
race.
bus.
The bus is too full.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like 7.8 billion people on this bus.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then Todd, this random dude named Todd, has it figured out.
Like, what did he do?
Yeah, what did Todd do?
He had two parents. Okay.
That kind of gets into, I forget who it is that said it. It's that, like, the idea that, children start naturally already aware of these things, or, it's something that's picked up based off of, is it nature versus nurture? It's definitely, it's like, maybe the question is intimacy nature or nurture, right? Is it something that naturally occurs in people? I don't have an answer tonight, but like, it's usually a combination of both, but like maybe intimacy is naturally in us and we lose it, or maybe it's something that we're taught, like, you said, by your mother, your father, or, whoever that may be, early on in life.
I think it's more natural, but I also kind of think that nature versus nurture is also a natural phenomenon amongst humans. I think that's
So
part
it's
of
the
our
nature
nature.
nurture.
It's a nature nurture.
It's not M&M, it's N and N.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and then, oh, I like that. And then it's like, so to me, like humans, that's how we evolved, where we start caring for our young and start caring it. Like a baby will not survive unless the parents love it and care for it, aren't there with it. It will die very quickly.
I think there's like 6 basic human needs, and one of them is like intimacy, or like, socializing and community. And it's funny, I wish I knew the other 5. I should
Yeah.
have, or if it's 5, the other 4. But it's interesting because that's humans will give up all the other all their other needs to survive for that one. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of remarkable how much we care about, even if we get in fights and stuff like that with people, how much we care about being around people.
Yeah, there's that Helen and Troy thing again.
Yeah.
So would you say that you have a desire for intimacy?
Yeah, I think I love intimacy. I think it's something that I try and I used to be really bad at it, probably. Actually, I know I was. And so it's something that I felt like I wanted to get better at, and it has a lot of value outside of just, feeling better every day. As far as like work, relationships, potential like partnerships and all this stuff, it's really beneficial to be able to create situations where someone feels seen. And where I've been kind of this last year, I've actually been able to kind of expand my understanding of intimacy by understanding the flip side of that coin. And I think I really believe in the idea of yin yang, that there's always something that's, in balance between the two of them. And I think something that I've been seeing is that desire is the yin to the yang of intimacy, right? Where they're both important in friendships, in romantic relationships, of course, or whatever they may be. And so you can kind of break it down into the baseline levels of what they are and how they happen. And desire is, these emotions like curiosity, intrigue, sensuality, the want to know more, right? Exploration. And in romantic relationships, sex, sexuality. And those are only formed through lack of presence. It's because you have that opportunity to see someone, you have the desire to know them because you don't know how long it's going to be, which is interesting because on the flip side of it, then you have intimacy, which is about presence. It's like, communication, loyalty, trust, feeling seen. Like that's what we're talking about. And over this last year in 2020, I had the time to understand desire a lot more, and how it applies. And because where I was is I put a lot of time and effort into understanding intimacy, and it was just too much, right? It's too much deep conversations. And it's not like those are a problem, but like if that's all it ever is a whew, is a lot. And that's where I think that balance that I've been trying to figure out, and that's like relationship to relationship, whatever that may be. And so that's where something that I've been seeing is like, okay, cool. I want to see my friends every night. But I think it's important sometimes not to see them, right?
Well, that would kind of go on to the idea of like, do you have time to be intimate with yourself?
Yeah, exactly. It's like I think I perceive from my conversations with you in the past, you're someone that also is very comfortable being alone.
Yes.
Yeah, and me too. Like
Hmm.
uh, I could be at home on a freaking Saturday night with a cup of tea, and I'm just like sitting on my couch. There's just music playing, and I'm like, oh, like one with the universe, and like I just feel great.
Austin Saturday night, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, you single folks.
It became all our Saturday nights
Oh
this
my
last
god!
year.
But honestly, I think it is really nice to be intimate with yourself,
Hmm.
like and
Ooh,
it's work.
question for you. What do you think being having a non-intimate relationship with yourself looks like?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think for a moment. I would say I had a really interesting moment at the gym about 2 months ago.
Hmm.
And it'd be funny if this person saw this video. That make me laugh. Maybe it'd start a conversation.
Okay, good.
And oh, as I shake the whole world.
Ah.
But what it was is I sat down after my workouts and I meditated for about 15 minutes in the yoga room.
Hmm.
And I have what I do is I put music on. I get in like a certain position that I find is comfortable for a decent amount of time, and I just meditate. Right, I just focus on my breath and just welcome the silence of just listening to my mind
Hmm.
and to the music. Right, and I finished, and I took my headphones off, and like every time I meditate, every time when I open my eyes for the first time, the world is just so much more beautiful. And
Yeah.
I'm able to see it a little bit more, right?
Hmm.
And so I do that and I set my things down. I look up and I'm just pretty happy, right?
Hmm.
And it's crazy how like 10 minutes, just spending time, 10 minutes with yourself can make you like really present with yourself
Yeah.
and the world, right? And this woman is like right over there, like 6 feet away, and her mouth is like, she's just like, did you just, she had evidently been watching me for 15 minutes. And she's like, did you just meditate for 15 minutes straight?
Oh yeah.
And, and I said, yeah. Right. Cause I'm like, whoa, right. I'm like, yeah, I did. And she's like, how? And I just said, well, I just did. Like I put on
Yeah.
a good song and I just listened to music. And she said something that made me really sad. She's like, "Oh, I couldn't do that. I can't sit with myself for a couple minutes, but I could never do
Mm,
that."
yeah.
And I've heard this not just once. That's just a really good example.
Hmm.
And I told her, I'm like, well, uh, I thought for a moment, right? And I'm trying to I'm going to paraphrase it, right? I'm not going to say it exactly how I said,
Yeah.
but I said, "Are you not willing to give yourself 5 minutes?"
Hmm.
Right? And she's like, and that made her like think, right? And she's like, I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, sure. So it'd be really funny if she saw this. But
Hmm.
the question that and this isn't the first person that I've talked with about this is I'm like, are you willing to give yourself 5 minutes?
Hmm.
Just, and a lot of people that answer is no. It's really scary. But all of the people that I've been around lately that I've been learning from, my mentors, the people that I find that have success in life in a way that I'd like to learn, they're all very comfortable being alone.
Really? Yes. Um, I suppose, to circle around back to my question to you, what is a non-intimate relationship with yourself is? It was a person who's unwilling to be alone or give themselves the time that they would need to get to know themselves.
Yeah, I
To
think
have a
that's a good
shallow,
definition.
yeah, to have a shallow relationship with yourself.
And that would be unfortunate. I think we're all kind of very interesting and beautiful creatures, and the world's also amazing, right? And I did a really cool experiment. I like to do social experiments on myself. I don't know if it's a good thing, but it's a
Dep
thing I do. And I
Depends what the
remember,
experience is, but yeah.
yeah, I did in 2016 or 17, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
I did 7 days without looking at myself.
Oh,
No mirrors, no phones, no photos, no nothing.
that'd be very hard for me.
It's just, it's even hard if you set the intention to do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Windows are reflective. Like you're
Yeah.
driving to work and you're like, fuck, can't look in the mirror. Like, glad I didn't run over any children. But
Always glad for that.
But it was really hard to do it at first because I'm like, oh my God, like, I want to see what I look like. Do I have acne? Is my hair right? Like, there's so many questions. Like,
am I wearing pants?
Yeah, like, well, you can still look at your, you just couldn't look at your face.
I get you.
Yeah, but like that would be like taking it like no mirror, no looking at the body, and you just
nothing.
Like, you walk out in like some real nice pink tights that have a rip right down the butt. Like,
it's for science.
Yeah, that's what you can tell them as you're being dragged out of like Wally World or something like that. But it was really hard to do at first, and I had all of these insecurities that just like. And like I said, 7 days. It's actually not that long. It feels like a really long time to do it.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that long.
Say what?
In the grand scheme of things, it's not that long.
Yeah, exactly.
But given the right perspective, it can be forever.
Yeah, especially because like we carry around our phones everywhere, right? Like
totally, yeah.
That's also reflective.
Yeah, and I have a mirror right there looking at myself the entire time. I don't know how you did it.
It was really hard. But the cool thing about that experience is on the 7th day, I went into the bathroom, right? And don't worry, I went into the bathroom and I looked at myself for the first time and I started crying. And I'm like, I just started looking at myself, just got closer, and I'm like looking at my eyes and the way that my face looks. And it was a cool experiment because it let me see myself as a stranger. And it's a cool experience, right? And in that moment, it's kind of like meditating in a way, I would say, but like different. Really, I think the thing that I constantly am trying to learn for myself is that I just assume that I'm just, kind of a fucked up person trying to do a better job, but there's also a lot of beauty that I can bring the world. And it's easy to forget that. I know, Dad, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, or like what you find allows you to find like intimacy with yourself, right? Like, I think this is something that we both really value. And I find that by being intimate with myself, I can be intimate with other people.
Yeah. Well, I find it interesting that after not looking at yourself for 7 days, and then being able to, and then going through that, and first it's really hard not to look at yourself, and it would seem that would be kind of like that you're not giving yourself the proper amount of attention, or maybe your body's like you're not caring for yourself by not checking up on how you're doing. But the way I kind of view it is you're allowing yourself just to be without having, again, the pressures of whatever identity we have placed upon us. And then once the 7 days were over and you look at yourself, it was, as you said, looking at you as a stranger and looking at you without the judgments of your entire life, looking at you. Like you were seeing yourself truly for who you are, for like what I'm now being poetic, but it might have been
ego a little bit.
It might have been seeing yourself for the first time without all the weight and standards that you have placed with all the time. I think every single time we check ourselves, it's not because we're admiring ourselves. At least it's not when I admire myself. It's what's wrong? What's the mistake? Okay, how do I do this? Do I fix my frame? Oh crap, my hair's out. Do I have something in my teeth? My beard is missed. It's always how can we be a little bit more perfect? And maybe from not having that pressure the entire time, it was just it's like one of the things I have become a far more intimate with myself this year, because I had the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think maybe hopefully everyone has a little bit.
Yeah. And one of the things that I did was have to really go dive deep into my to my psyche, to my past, and figure out a whole bunch of parts that have been holding myself together. And one of those
Mm.
parts is the perfectionist. The idea that unless I am perfect, I am not worthy of being of notice.
Are you a Enneagram 3?
I what?
Are you familiar with the Enneagram test?
I am not. What is it?
Oh, it's really fascinating. It's a personality test, but
Mm.
I am as well. And it's like in the negative sense of that emotion, of that like personality, it would be like
Mhm.
seeking accolades as a form of getting love.
Oh, I don't think I
And
am. I don't really care about what other people think, but I have a very high standard of what my idea of myself
just as
is.
you're like a 3 for yourself.
Yeah, three for myself. Like unless I feel that I was perfect, then I am not worthy of any attention, including the attention for myself.
Hmm.
And learning to deal with that part, and not so much deal with it, learn to take care of that part, because I believe that most defensive mechanisms that we have are created when we are children and we don't really know how to deal with the
Right.
world. And then when we become adults, we're struggling. We don't know why. Well, it's because we're using defense tactics that a 13-year-old made up, that a 7-year-old
Right.
made up, and they have
Like
no
it
idea.
might not have been the best option, but like it was the one that you thought was good at the time.
It's what you could do at the time, yes. And I think part of the becoming an adult is learning to take care of those parts that were not there. One of the roles that I feel that parents have to do is prepare their children to deal with the struggles that they're going to have.
Hmm.
And something that my grandparents did greatly for me is be able to understand and go into my mind. And one of the things they did not do great for me was I got too much of what I wanted. I didn't have to struggle for life.
Hmm.
And it was easy. And so when things aren't easy for me, I get upset. And so dealing with
Yeah.
that perfectionist part of my life, okay, and then applying it to now has been a very good journey. It's like, it's good that everything stopped actually in COVID. Like, it gave me the time to work on it.
I mean,
Um,
you might as well at that time,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Nothing else to do. Um, but but being intimate with myself is like truly, for me, truly going in and understanding and holding and cherishing all the parts that I basically ignored. I really get that lady who said I couldn't spend 15 minutes with myself. I continually have distractions going on in my head.
Mhm.
Audiobook going on here, a TV show going on here, thoughts start going ahead. I go to sleep and then thousand little chirpy chirpy chirp thoughts. And very rarely am I able to go into the point where I can just be quiet and listen. I'm always talking, always talking, always talking.
Mhm.
And if you're always talking, you can't listen. And so very rarely do I allow myself to really just listen to what I am. And a lot of the times it's because part of me is screaming in pain.
Yeah. It's so much easier to like seek distraction when there's something that's happening that you don't like.
Yeah, and maybe it might be like a state of being that's continually always there, and you just learn to ignore it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's how you cope with it. But for me at least, it's far more fulfilling to face it and then to cherish it. At least stuff with myself.
I think that's a astute observation in general. It's like I think I really like what you're talking about with like being a child and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the unfortunate thing is children are so fragile. Like we're not when we were children, but in some ways we are. It's like
Yeah.
one person can say something like, let's say we just start singing randomly and someone comes up to us and says, your voice sounds like a frog, right? you
Well,
know and maybe it does.
yeah, and it
But they
hurts.
say that and it's just like it hits you, right? And all
Mm.
of a sudden, when you're 28 years old and so it's like, hey, do you want to go to karaoke? You say, oh, I can't sing.
Yeah, totally. Like you still have that memory, that trauma, that realization that you can't sing. You sound like a
Yeah,
frog.
and like just and then you look back and then you finally get to like maybe some therapy or something like that. You realize that was just a 13-year-old kid being mean, like to me. That
Yeah.
was the extent of it. And my defense mechanism was just to never sing again.
Yeah.
Like,
Like it's amazing. Like there was this girl that I had a crush on
ooh,
when I was
should we hit
13.
her up?
No. Um, okay.
Well,
I
missed your
but
shot.
you know, I'm glad I did. But like there was like this was before I actually understood anything was going on. Like as a 13, like I was a fairly innocent 13-year-old, and 13-year-olds are already really innocent to begin with. Even the ones who think they're edgy and stuff,
Right.
they're children. Um, but like I had called her because we were supposed to hang out this one day, and she decided to give her phone to her friend, and her friend informed me that the girl no longer wanted to see me or have anything to do with me for some
Oh,
reason.
lovely.
Yeah, it was man, and I was really confused for a long time. Like I don't understand. We were like hanging out the other day, and now we're not, and I don't understand. And I'm again 13 years old. Um, but I realized later that set a seed in my head with the assumption that women want nothing to do with me. And it's not true. People
Right.
like it's like just generally women in general don't want anything to do with me. Generally, no one in general, they don't know me. So
Not yet.
not yet, but that just set a seed for a long time, and I had this complex for years and years that I am just unworthy because I didn't understand why this girl, this brat, just
Seriously
decided,
though, yeah.
yeah, but she's also a 13-year-old girl, and they're also confused. And so it's just kids being kids and being confused and doing all this stuff. That is not how you properly tell someone you don't want to hang out with people, by the way. Don't let your friends say they don't want to hang out with you guys. That's
Yeah.
not the proper way.
There's better
But
ways.
there's better ways. But
I'm
that
sorry
kind
that
of
happened. That
yeah,
sucks.
yeah, it did suck, but it was like it set for a very, very long time, and it created a
Right.
lot of other complex, nuanced ideas, and it had it very complex, it very like I can see the effects it had through my life. I think we're almost running out of time, but I wanted to go over one object before subject before we kind of wrap this up, which was like the idea of becoming a man, a good man.
Mhm.
Man, we wanted to go over that. Unless there's like any other topics that you really
No, I
want
think that's a great one to that's a great one to talk about.
to. Mhm.
I'll just start it off and then I'll
Yeah,
throw the ball to you. I'd love I
having chest hair.
yes, and I do.
There we go.
Done.
Mhm.
I've been educating myself a lot lately, reading books. I recommend a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy.
No
I
more
used to
sniping.
kind of fall in that nice guy realm.
Me too, right?
Yeah, man. But
Yeah, it
I'm not
sucks,
so
guys.
nice anymore. I'm kind,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
but it's a phenomena that's been developing actually since World War II. It's that we lost a lot of men. The science behind it is we lost a lot of men
Mhm.
during the war, and the men that came back had huge PTSD issues, rightfully so.
A little
And
messed up,
so
yeah.
we're dealing with a little bit of generational trauma,
Hmm.
and that's not. That's why there's this question that I've been having lately around what makes someone a good man. And I mean that's a very broad definition, right? Like
Hmm.
but I have been seeing actions lately in the world, you know, on a political scale, on a grand scale, and stuff like that, as well as interpersonally with some behavior I would not attribute to being good behavior as a man.
Hmm.
And I think it's fair to say that men are just physically stronger than women, you know, tend to be,
Hmm.
and that there has been a patriarchal society for a long period of time where men have been mostly in power.
Hmm.
That has been getting better. But the thing is I've heard these things from women lately where they're, I mean, I don't want to throw bad words out, but like you know, they're being assaulted by men, like in private quarters, or there's these atrocities that are happening behind closed doors.
Hmm.
And I've been hearing that from women in the pandemic of all times is when I've been hearing that. And so like what I've been attributing to is what makes one of the definitions I use for like what makes a good man is giving a emotional anchor for people to express themselves in a safe way. It's like given the fact that physically, you know, men tend to be stronger, it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you use that to your advantage. It means that you use that to the advantage of other people to
Hmm.
benefit them. And so I feel mostly in my masculine core, if you may, or more of a man when I'm listening to someone and giving them the space to express themselves. So it's kind of how I view it. It's like I feel protective. I feel like not like necessarily nurturing, but more so like I want to give people a space and a platform to express themselves. And so that's what lately how I've been identifying like when I feel more like a good man, and whereas I'm taking a lot of energy from other people, that's when I'm in like a bad phase, right?
I have a question. So what would be the difference to you between a because everything that you just said, like I would agree. I would think that would be being able to create a safe space for the people around you, be able to protect people with given with your power, being able to be able to listen and be someone that someone can come to. But also, would I say wouldn't also being a good woman, wouldn't that also fall into the same category?
I think so. So I've been studying a lot of like masculine and feminine like behavior.
Hmm.
I don't think it's associated with gender. It's like we all have different degrees of it, right? Kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the Kinsey scale. So we all fall somewhere on that scale.
Hmm.
And both of them are good as long as they're in balance with the situation.
Hmm.
So I think you're right. I think it's like a different standpoint. If you don't mind, I'm going to equate it to dance.
Okay, yeah.
Um, and as a leader, you know as well as me, probably even if not more, that it's your job to create the intention of initial idea of the dance.
Yes.
If you don't do that, you're not leading. You're just holding hands, and it's a hot mess, right?
Wiggling.
Yeah. And I've actually been equating that, leading is not a man thing. I
Mm.
think it tends to have masculine traits to it. Anyone can do it.
Yes.
But the idea is that you are grounded in the intention of the dance. And then
Mm-mm.
the execution happens through the follow, right?
Hmm.
And that's kind of where I'm equating it. It's like, as a man, I like to give the platform for someone else to express. Does that
Hmm.
make sense? Does that combine well with the dance analogy?
Yes, absolutely. And for me, like the role of the lead, which I personally do feel is more masculine, is to provide structure and a framework so the follow can decorate and create the energy around it. The lead has to, like, the way I like to think of it is that if you were to compare to nature, the lead is the river bank and the follow is the river. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, and without the bank, without the shore, without the structure, the water cannot flow between. But without the follow, it's just like a giant hole on the ground.
Well,
um,
and it's something I've seen about your dancing that you do intentionally,
mhm,
that, or at least I observe that I believe you are, is that it's not only that you're like the riverbank, it's
mhm.
that you watch the water as it goes as well.
Yeah, and you can kind of keep forming as you go. So I it's interesting to kind of look at the idea of the what makes a man a man. It's like the idea of what would be like to me, like what are your what would be the qualifications. I'm going to stay away from like the gender the
Right.
biological terms for the moment, but to me it's more like, again, identity. What makes someone's identity, like a lot of people in the society, at least with young men that I'm talking about, don't really know what it means to be a man. They don't really know what they're supposed to do. And a lot of people view actually being a man, at least I did for a while, as being something sinful, as being something horrible. You are part of the problem that created so much misery for everybody else. Well, only half of me. Um, so, and so
But
like,
that shouldn't be the case.
no, I don't think it should be I don't think it should be the case. That's all. I do think part of being masculine is being solid, is being strong. I think being part of that, at least for me, is also being someone that you can go to that as a protector, not that needs to protect over others, but that can be. I think that a lot of it has to do with taking on responsibility and being able to, when there's a crisis happening, you are a person that a person will go to. And to say that people who are females can't, they can do all of those things too.
Of course.
Absolutely. Um, and it really the lines blur when you go from person to person to person, what their definition would be, I think. But for me, like, To me, only the idea of a man is almost like a personal thing. It's like, what do I strive to be? What do I strive to be in order to be a man? It sounds like for you is like, what can I be to be the best label that I have given myself? And if we go back to the idea, like we're going to take off the labels, what are my actions going to be?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's a dedication too, right?
Yeah.
It's like I have bad traits as me as a person, and if I'm not cognitive of my behavior, they come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's because it's really hard, I think, to label things as good and bad in
Yes.
general. I think it because it's like you hear about the story of Mother Teresa. You know, she actually was very miserable her whole life. She
Yes.
came out, publicly about it at the end, but she did a lot of good actions. And so it's
Yeah.
like,
So good for other people.
but not for her, right?
Yeah, but then you go into religion, like, well, she's in heaven now, so I guess she's happy. But
Yeah.
um,
So
maybe.
it's like it's kind of a little bit of that. It's like I think as long as I think it's okay. I think responsibility. I think holding yourself accountable is also
Mm,
part of being a good man. So like if you do something that's wrong, own it, right?
yeah.
Make it better. If you see someone else is doing something that's not okay, stand in like within reason,
Hmm.
and not from a standpoint of like holier than thou or better than anyone else. It's just that's part of I think what it means to be like a good man is to work on yourself, is to take that moment and say, okay, someone is being treated poorly and I can do something about it. Am I
Hmm.
willing to do that, right?
Hmm.
And once again, don't be stupid. Sometimes situations are outside of your control, but like
Yeah. And sometimes you
um
actually don't know what the situation is, so you interfering may actually be a bad thing. So with
right.
also the power also has to come awareness as well.
Yeah, and so it's really hard to define that. I think it's
Yes.
easier to define bad, actions
Hmm.
by
Yeah.
men. And I think right now, I think you'd agree with me is I'm just seeing too many bad actions by men lately. Not all of them, but
Hmm.
too many of them that it really bothers me. And so I think this is more of like a conversation I'm going to be having for the rest of my life. It's like, what is a good man? Like, and
Hmm.
how can we create more of that in the world? Uh,
I would. An interesting question to me is like, why are the bad actions so prevalent? Why is it would someone want to be a jerk? What benefit gain do people have by
And a jerk's not
overstepping?
even the worst one, right?
No, no, no. Like I just recently I've been following the like it happened in December. Lieutenant it's where the officers held up a lieutenant in the army at gunpoint. It was a black man and two white officers, and they just like were yelling at him and screaming at him, and the guy was had his hands up whole time. It's like, tell me what's going on. I don't know what's going on. And everything. Just outrageous behavior by the police. Just
Right.
absolutely horrifying. And I'm watching, going like, man, that lieutenant's going to get a lot of money when the lawsuits ends.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's
And
okay, right? He's
yeah, he's okay. He survived. He's
thank God.
actually smart. But also the thing, like, if we look at bad behavior and versus a good behavior, or positive, negative and positive behavior, like that lieutenant acted to me like a man. Okay, he acted responsible. He was calm. He had extraordinary stressful situations, but he handled it. He was a rock. I'm rocking it, and the people there were like, I would call them children if they were not so dangerous. They were
Yeah,
flinging
children of
around their power.
firearms.
They were screaming. They had no idea. Like, I had no idea what their hope was going, and there was no way in this society that they were going to come up positive. Like, I don't. I really would be curious what their mind state was while they were doing it, because there was no gain from this. And this is in 2020, after all the Black Lives Matter and the protest and all the attention about it. So, and you're doing this to a lieutenant and a black man, and you have body. He's filming it. Where was your head anyway?
Yeah.
Um,
Like just purely from a selfish standpoint,
yeah,
like,
this is not good
well,
for you.
if you don't mind if I attach that idea, it's like in that position, those police officers had more power, right? They have a gun.
Yes,
And
they did.
so
Yeah.
it behooves them to be the man in that situation, understand that they have, or the men, sounds like
Yeah.
they weren't, but like that they are in a place that they could hold this man's life hostage, quite
Well,
literally.
they did, but you see, I do like if I were to give them the arbitrary labels of and responsible, I do not consider them men. I consider them scumbags. I
No,
consider
I'm saying like their behavior should have been different.
they should have been. They should. They
Yeah,
to me, they were children with guns in that
sounds
situation.
like
If
it.
yeah, and the man was the person who was unarmed on the floor, very calm, handling the situation. Handling the situation where no one really got hurt. A responsible adult.
But that would
Um,
be like what I was saying is that that would be the example of people who should have been acting like men, but they weren't,
yes, yes.
because they are the position of power, quite
Hmm.
literally over life. With because in our country we allow police to make the decision whether or not to kill people,
Hmm.
and maybe that's something to address, not in this conversation, but in general. But like
Hmm.
because of that, that's where I it makes me want to throw up to hear that, because that's a lot of responsibility. So if they're being not boys but men, they should be understanding that they're the ones that should be the calm ones, right? Like,
They
whereas
should.
it's good on this guy for like standing up and well, or laying down, but like
Yeah.
right, handling that, because they couldn't.
Hmm.
And
Um,
that makes me wonder why they couldn't.
I don't know. I don't know why. And also, then we have to go into the whole thing. So maybe I also believe that you can be a man or an adult in one situation and be a complete child in another
Yeah.
situation. Like I'm fairly adult, I think, in conversations with people and understanding and listening to them, but I'm a child when it comes to finances. Um,
Hey, I just got into middle school for that, so I'm so excited.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
man.
I don't
I
like if you,
understand.
yeah, and so like, and given the situations, like, I think that's what the basic thing about a job is like you have a certain responsibility. You're supposed to do this, and if you do that, you're an adult. Congratulations. If you don't, you're a child. Bye bye. Um,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, and of course that goes like sometimes you're just not in the right place about it, and sometimes you're dealing with a lot of things. Not to say to
Or
anybody,
maybe you're just not taught, right? And so
yeah,
ignorance is ignorance is just very difficult.
yeah, you weren't given the tools necessary in order to do the job
Right.
that you had. Um, so but Yeah, but so blah, blah. So, but last question for you. When when did you, Austin, become a man?
I became a man back in 1992. No.
How old are
Uh,
you?
that's when I was born. I would
Oh,
say,
okay.
I think this is a really fucking hard question to answer. I'd
Yeah,
say I'm
yeah.
still becoming a man.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in general, I would say it started when an ex told me that I was really out of my masculine, and it really hurt when she said that. And
When
I
you
was
were really sorry, what?
she said I was really out of my masculine energy. And she said
You
that
were
to me when we were
you were
dating. So we were exes at the time. And she
you
said
were
that it made me
really
really
out of your
mad.
masculine energy.
Say what?
You were really out of your masculine energy?
Yeah, so like I'm not in my masculine core. Like I'm outside of it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so she said that and it made me mad. And I'm like, fuck you. And
I'm a man.
I'm a man. But she
Yeah.
said that. And then and then I'm like, and then I realized afterwards, I'm like, well, that kind of made me mad. So it must have been kind of true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I just started educating myself on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reading books and stuff like that. So I'd say I feel a lot more in my masculine core actually right when the pandemic happened
Mm-hmm.
was around the time that I started to really feel like a man,
That must
which
have
have been
sucked.
2020. Say what?
That must have sucked. It's like, all right, I know what I'm doing, ready to start the life.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I think the pinnacle of that was that someone came into my office at the job I was working at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they treated me very poorly. And I told them that they weren't allowed to do that, and I got fired. And I felt comfortable
Hmm.
leaving that, and my life has been better since. But like in that moment beforehand, years ago, I just sucked it up. Like I
Yeah,
get
you were
treated
taking it.
poorly, right? But I said, "Excuse me," and the way that I thought about it is just like I don't mind this because I understand what's happening and I can leave, but they must treat other people this way. And so I'm going to say, this is not okay. I'm going to be the person that says that. And so I did. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that was like a very defining moment. It just actually happened to happen on like Friday the 13th of March 2020. So it's like, as soon as it hit, then, you know, like everything else happened. But
Yeah.
it's hard. I think actually taking positive actions that, you know, are good for yourself sometimes, and like being a man, kind of like we were talking about, there's consequences to that sometimes, and it's kind of accepting those consequences and doing the right thing. Because, you know, the quote that I've been looking at a lot, which is by Albert Einstein, is that not everything that is popular is right, and not everything
Mhm.
that's right is popular.
Mhm.
And it's hard sometimes, right? It's like you have to
Truly.
be vulnerable.
And yeah, to me that would be like the idea, like you stood for you had an idea an ideal of what your head, like how you should be treated and how
Mhm.
others around you should be treated, and when it was breached you're like, no, that's not okay,
Right.
and then you were fired
But
for it.
then you have to take actions, right?
Yeah.
So, and like I said, it's not, and I know you've probably been in those positions as well. Is it's when that moment happens, there's always something that runs in my head. It's like, oh, I don't have to say anything.
Sure, yeah. It's like not a
Like,
big deal, like it'll just go
it's
like
not a
way.
big deal.
Yeah.
But lately I'm like, no, it is a big deal, right? Like
Hmm.
I do need to say something. And like I said, sometimes the consequences suck, but like ultimately it's like, you know, when you go to bed at night, can you fall asleep?
There is a quote that I made myself that
Oh,
reminds me of
nice.
that. Phrases. Okay. Oh yeah. So the thing that I've been living by recently is the quote. Quote is, "It may be easy to do, but it will be harder to live with."
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So the idea, like, it's easier to just like let someone roll over you and like just take it,
Yep.
but years and years and years, and that, do you want to do that for years, like for the rest of your life?
No,
Um.
but it's I love that. Like,
Mhm.
can you please send me that? I love that quote.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
listen to motivational music and motivational speeches
Hmm.
for like the last 3 years. And like I go to the gym sometimes and I don't want to be at the gym. I'm so tired, but I'm
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
also want to be healthy, you
Hmm.
know, or like, you know,
Yeah.
it's
The idea of like working out, it's hard to do in the moment, but if you don't work out for years, man, you pay for it.
yeah. Like, and so I love that. That quote just like nails it. And I think, and it's the same thing with like connection and meeting people and you know, you have to be vulnerable. Like it's never easy for anyone to do things that scare them. You know, courage isn't the lack of you know, fear. It's overcoming it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Like if you're not afraid, then you don't need courage.
right. Then you're indifferent. You're just doing something. But
Yeah.
yeah, but it isn't easy.
Yeah. That's what
It's
the
not like, and the things that are easy sometimes aren't worth it.
true.
Ode to
Well,
joy. Except for
I
this
think,
conversation was easy, so it was good.
yeah, this conversation actually, what that means we didn't do it right then. Okay, we gotta start over. Um,
Oh, is that the perfectionism that you were mentioning before?
it's like, yeah,
There it
grow.
is.
Wait a minute. Oh crap, we didn't do. Okay, we got to start over. We got to go to the
Quality
hard stuff.
content.
No, no, this has actually been very fantastic, and I thank you for being my first podcast interview. Like this is fantastic. Thank you so much, Austin.
Dude, thanks. This was awesome. It's also great to catch up with you.
Oh yeah,
Um,
totally.
always a good energy. I mean, I hope to see you on the dance floor soon, but
One day, hopefully.
one day, 20,
Um, i-
2050.
is there anything that you would like to plug or let the people, audience, my one or two people that are watching, that you would like them to know, or things that you do, or things that you are, events that you're coming up, or anything that you're doing at all, or just whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I am working on some video content
Hmm.
around like connection stuff. That's not really out yet.
Yeah.
So I'd say right now I have a blog called pointsofconnection.com,
Okay.
or it's called Points of Connection, but it's pointsofconnection.com.
Hmm.
And it's just a blog that has some of my thoughts.
Mhm.
So if you find yourself, you know, questioning how to make new friends or like how to be more vulnerable and stuff like that, there's some of them as my thoughts, and some of them are tools that I've used that have helped me. So that would be thank you, by the way, for that. That would be the plug.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. That will be in the description down below. Points of connection, and after all, that's all we want to create connections. I mean, you need to get to the point about it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And thank you, Zal. This was super fun. This was
Thank you. Super fun. Yeah, I would love to do this again, or crowd play, or like more discussions with you. Thank you again.
awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.